state such as the one that we have evolved, where bandits, terrorists will sit in meetings with elected officials of state, traditional rulers, and bandits, armed bandits, would dictate peace terms to the state, and the same state would have the room to harass citizens who are asking for better government, confine citizens who have dared to demand that they be set free from the evil empire that we have managed to evolve. Make it make sense that there are persons, such as Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, for instance, in prison, not by due process of law, because when trial has been extended beyond how many years, and then it doesn't, even the optic looks stupid. You're meeting bandits, armed ones, unrepentant. You're begging for peace. They are dictating terms. But the person who you say has called for armed insurrection against whose people you've deployed fighter jets, these fighter jets do not know their ways around the Kankara forest or Sambisa, but they can walk. It does not make sense. So when we begin to demand that these questions be asked of the state, these are not questions that are being asked as a partisan. These are questions being asked, and you can't even claim to be a patriot because there is no country commanding your patriotism. It is sick in the extreme to continue to believe that you can counter this system by engagement with it as though it were a system amenable to change. I am of the opinion that all of us must come to the knowledge of the fact that we are not dealing with partisan politics. We're dealing with issue of citizenship. This must move beyond the argument of I'm obedient, I am I am batified, I'm APC, I am revolutionary now. It doesn't matter. I don't care about your labels. What I care about is the substance of the issue. And the substance of the issue for me is that regardless of what you are and how you identify yourself, we are not citizens. Be enamored with the idea of citizenship to the point of desiring it. And the first basis of that is the right for you to vote. In the coming days, I have said this, and I think it is time that we also come to this understanding. We can talk from now to kingdom come. Nothing is going to change until we act. But we must also be deliberate about the actions that we take. I am of the opinion that the time has come to focus on building a broad-based pan-Nigerian movement that is found on a demand for citizenship and a respect for the rights of the Nigerian. It's not about what party you vote. You can go ahead and vote any party you care. But the idea of citizenship must be raised in direct confrontation against the idea of feudalism that governs Nigeria, and that is what has led us into this moment. If we are seen as citizens, no judge would dare to do the kind of things that have been done by our judiciary. 6 months, the judiciary had no pronouncement on emergency rule in Rivers State. If you have never seen a castrated judiciary before, you need not look any further than the Nigerian judiciary. And if the last hope of the common man be as comical, asinine, and useless as the Nigerian judiciary has become, then there is serious cause to understand that it is the system that has to be confronted. Why do I say this? All of us are creatures in time. Creatures in time. Last week I sang that song, Sheitoshi Oremi John Lord, do what you will, time is going. This week I sang, Bini Bata Yewa Sopola. When today is gone, they will say tomorrow. Tomorrow will not come one day. 20 years ago, a most brilliant Nigerian, one of the pillars of today's democracy, Chima Ubani, was violently snatched away from us. He's dead. Everything he did is today the source of legends. It is not by accident that the Nigerian state has never celebrated his like. If they will celebrate his like, you realize the lies they have told you about the likes of Tinubu fighting for democracy. But the relevance of the example I've just given is to let you understand very clearly that ideas outlive men. It is the ideas for which we live that endures. If we don't focus on the idea of citizenship to the point where it becomes something that the average Nigerian pursues with passion, understanding that it should move beyond partisanship, we will be mired in the mud that we found ourselves today, constantly bickering about ethnicity and constantly talking about religion. This morning, the totality of my preoccupation is to say to you, when will you come to the knowledge of the fact that it is the idea of citizenship that can take over and expel the evil that has overtaken us? In the absence of an idea to confront the evil, nothing would endure. Men will live and men will die. It is the ideas for which we live, the ideals by which we live our lives that would endure. So when I ask when, I was asking when would it be our time to rise as a people? When would there be water for all? And I'm not talking about floods in your home. When will there be qualitative education for all? When will there be power for all? When will there be justice for all? When will there be good roads for all? When would Nigeria rise above its many contrived limitations? The only time that happens is when we embrace the idea of citizenship. The idea of citizenship is what makes you work for the common good. Olówó kan láàrin olòṣì mẹ́fà. When you translate that properly, what it speaks to is the poverty of private wealth. In pursuit of our personal comforts and wealth, every one of us have become impoverished. The idea of citizenship, the very idea of it, when we embrace that, it becomes the antidote for the madness that we have embraced. There is a young man who is doing wonderful work across the length and breadth of Nigeria, and I speak to Peter Aka, Randy Peter. He speaks constantly to the idea of electoral reform. I mean, that gave me 110%, even though I despair. Well, whilst we may despair and whilst we may disagree, it is never going to happen that anything will change simply because we no agree. It is not enough to declare yourself to be disagreeable. You must come up with ideas that advances you beyond your disagreement. My belief is that the idea of citizenship pursued corporately is what will save all of us. If you're asking when will not happen until when you've embraced the idea that only citizenship found on the rule of law can deliver a democracy where your votes would count and where you can then proceed. I toyed with the idea of resting my lectures today. I toyed with the idea because I've come to the knowledge of the fact that sometimes it comes across as an unsolicited, thankless job. But I remind myself, some years back, I wrote a piece. I say, I do not write for you. It was at the peak of my frustration with the seemingly intractable nature of our crisis, as if it would never stop, nothing would ever change. And then I found a new lease of life when I decided that I'll make my preachments more or less testimonies against the obdurate generation that I have had to endure. So when I began to toy with the idea of not speaking, at least taking some time off, it struck me. I would be succumbing to despair, and I would have allowed my enemies to triumph, which is not something that appeals to me. I like the idea of irritating those who are unhappy with me. It gives me pleasure to irritate them. So, yeah, I am not going to rest my sermons. Those of you who are unhappy with it, bully for you. I enjoy the sound of my own voice, and I'm sure that to an extent, I still have something to say to those who will hear. And even if you are not hearing, I know a generation is coming who will pour over these videos in the search for a way out of the madness. I'm done with this week. Yorùbá will say àbọ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ là ń sọ fọ́mọlúàbí. Tó bá dénú ẹ̀, àdòdìdì. Half a word is enough for the wise. I thank God for the privilege of life and the capacity to speak. I will not be silenced until I am silent. Have a beautiful week ahead of you, and God bless you all.
Well detailed speech. Well, God bless you, Dele Farotimi, for always lending your voice, at a point where it is critically and intentionally needed. Of course, what then shall we say? Shall we continue like this? That this evil will abound. I think the response should be God forbid. Yes, we cannot continue like that. Has said, the right questions has been asked. The true question remains when? When are we going to have the true democracy that we seek in this country? When are we going to have the true justice that we seek in our legal system? When the high level of corruption, everything is being politicized. The police system is politicized. Everywhere has been politicized. The military, everywhere has been infiltrated. When are we going to have a true federalism? When are we going to have a true citizenship that, okay, yes, can be very, very proud to be a citizen of this country? When? Is a very, very sensitive and a very, very serious question that we all need to ask Nigerians. When? The politicians keep rotating themselves within themselves. You can't, nothing. You can't categorically go to the police and get justice. You can't go to the judiciary and get justice. Everywhere is, if it favors them, they speak. If they don't speak, if it doesn't favor them, they speak. If it favors them, they don't care. When are we going to have it right? When? I think truly, truly, the citizens need to come together and start taking a serious measures and start breeding this idea that can push the nation forward. The question still remain when. The country has been, the masses has been impoverished, that everybody now chase after their stomach. Nobody wants to take responsibility for anything. Everybody is trying to trade with caution. Everybody is trying to be very, very careful. The questions still remain when. Shall we now continue this way? We cannot continue like this. Dele to me, these words will stand the test of time. And I believe that by the mercies of God, the right people will find this way and they will tread on it. Thanks for sharing.